I don't know what I've been told.
I don't know what I've been told.
The ACT's the way to go.
The ACT's the way to go.
So prepare and do your best.
So prepare and do your best.
On the ACT test.
On the ACT test.
Sound off.
1, 2.
Knock it on down.
3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Today's ACT test prep camp is on science reasoning. Category: experiments. A few strategies. Look for 3 things in an experiment's passage. 1. Identify the objective. What were they studying? 2. Identify the method of research. How did they study it? And 3. Identify the results. What did they find? You have a copy of this passage in front of you, and what I'd like for you to do right now is to read the paragraph at the top. If you need to underline something, important facts, circle. We're going to be underlining the objective in just a second, but mark it as you read it. So where do you usually find the objective of the study? Well, you usually either find it at the beginning or you find it at the end. And in this case, you find it at the beginning, where it says that plants exhibit phototropism, which is bending toward light when placed in the presence of a light source. Go ahead and underline this if you didn't do it already, because that is your focus for the questions that you're going to be doing. And reading on through it, I'm sure you might have marked that the tip of the plant is not what bends, but a region farther down the stem bends toward the light. You should have known that, or noticed that you've got 4 flowering plants exposed to sunlight to see where and what the response of the plants are. Now then, we've identified your objective, and let's look at the second part, the method. How did they study it? And to do this, you need to go through each of the experimental groups, and you need to identify the parts of the experiment, or at least pay attention to what you know about experiments. For example, you know that the control of the experiment is the experimental group that does not contain any treatment. It was nothing was done to it, nothing was added to it. And then you have variables. In this, obviously, sunlight is going to be a variable, but look for any other variables as you go through these experiments. So let's read through them together. Experiment 1. When light struck plant 1 from the side, a region a few millimeters down from the tip bent. Ooh, now that's something we're looking for, because we noticed that up in our reading, as it grew until the tip pointed directly toward the light source. So in this group, we have light, and we have a bent tip, which means it did respond to the light. Plant 2 in experiment 2 was also placed in the presence of sunlight, but the tip of the plant was covered with a dark cap. Now there's a change. The plant failed to bend toward the sunlight. So we had light, of course, because the thing that has changed in this, the variable that has changed, is the treatment to the tip. And when you put the dark cap on it, no bending. So no phototropism. Experiment 3. Plant 3 was exposed to the same conditions. That means had light, except a clear cap, so I'm just going to circle that. Replace the dark cap. This plant bent toward the light source, so we had a bent tip. Experiment 4. When a flexible collar, there's one we haven't heard before, was placed around the bending region of plant 4, the plant still bent. So we had light and we had a bent tip. So we've looked through our experiment and we're ready to check out the questions. Question number 1. I'm going to give you just a minute to read through it. Well, really not a minute, a few seconds to read through it and see what you think. Mark on it, mark out the ones that you don't think are right, and see if you can come up with the correct answer. If you recall, from the last time we did science prep, there were 3 types of questions: understanding questions, analysis questions, and generalizations. This is an understanding question. We're just going to write that right here. This is put in here because the test makers just want to see if you get it. If you can read this and just get the very basics, really the simplest of the questions. So let's go through it. A, the plant requires, let's read it first. The results of experiments 1 and 2 indicate that. Now, if you chose B, you got it right. The tip of the plant detects the light source. Now, how do you know that? How did you figure that out? Well, you figured it out because when you put a dark cap over the tip, the plant didn't respond. A says the plant requires both sunlight and nutrition in order to bend. This experiment had nothing to do with nutrition. We didn't hear anything about it, so it's not the right answer. The light-proof cap assists the plant in its bending action. The light-proof cap is actually the dark cap. And we know that the one with the dark cap, from down here, there was no bending, so that one can't be right. It is the amount of sunlight that causes the bending of the plant. We don't really know that. We did not get those results from this experiment. So we're going to mark that out, and we're ready to move on to the next question. Again, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds, to see if you can figure it out. I think that's about all the time you should need, because if you wrote down on your first page, I had to do a new page, but if you wrote down right here when we were going through this experiment that plant number 1 was your control group, you don't have to do anything except mark A, because you've already figured that out, and it shouldn't take you but a couple of seconds to do that question. So you've saved some time here for some of those longer questions on the test. Next question, take a couple of seconds and read over it. So what did you choose? How many of you chose A? Hope not, because that's the wrong answer. The right answer is C. Based on the results of experiments 1 through 4, it can be concluded that the strength of the sun's rays, lost my place, correlated with the bending of the plant. I'm not sure we had that. The passage doesn't give any information about differences between flowering plants and non-flowering plants, and it doesn't give us any information about the strength of the sun's rays, so we can't conclude that from this information. B says flowering plants are unaffected by sunlight. Well, we know that's not right because we've proven that they do respond through the process of phototropism. And D is where it goes from flowering plants differently from non-flowering plants. Again, we didn't have the information, so if you picked C, you're right. This question is a little bit harder. This is an analysis question. Analysis questions require more than one piece of information. So you need to look at the results of all of the experiments. So it just takes a little more time. But if you've done that initial marking on your test and spending a little bit of quality time with that paragraph, then you should be good to go. Question number 4. This is a generalization question. Let's go ahead and fill this in. Generalization. And this is your clue right here. Suppose. Read over it. I think this one's a little harder. The generalization questions give you some information and then you have to make a prediction on a different situation. So let's see what it says. The tip of the flowering plant is cut off in the presence of a light source and a new tip does not grow. What will be the response of the plant? Now, you already know that the initial communication for phototropism occurs in the tip of the plant. If the tip is cut off, the most likely reaction would be that the plant will no longer be able to send information to the lower bending region and therefore the plant will not bend. You know it's in the tip of the plant because when you put the dark cap on there, it didn't bend. If you follow all the results of the study, then it's kind of a logical question, and the answer is if you cut the tip off, if you put a dark cap on it, what did the plant not do? It didn't bend toward the light, and A is your answer. You can't really say the plant will die, you don't know. The plant will produce flowers, you don't know. The plant will exhibit phototropism, because the message comes from the tip. So that's not so hard after all, it just looks a little bit difficult. On the test for these experiment questions, you will actually have 6 questions. We just looked at 4 today. But I want you to remember, look for those 3 things. What were they studying? How did they study it? And what did they find?